Alright guys, Murph's here. Now, you will notice that I don't have my normal background for my video. This is because I'm away from home at the moment. This is part of some of the changes that were upcoming that I alluded to in a couple of other videos here published previously. But right now, I have an interesting opportunity to be able to review some stuff that I don't normally have access to. So I decided that it was prudent to go ahead and jump on this opportunity regardless of where it is that I'm at right now. So with that being the case, let's go ahead and jump into talking about this. A Gray Ghost precision lower with some seemingly Mark 18 type features chambered in 5.56. Now I refer to this rifle as the MK18 Mod 0, which is kind of a play on words for the Mark 18 Mod 0, which this rifle is obviously very inspired by, but is just not quite it. And we'll talk about that more once we get into features and stuff like that. However, for the moment, let's go ahead and talk about history. Now, unfortunately, this is not a terribly historic rifle. I don't necessarily want to hop into the history of the Mark 18 either in this particular video as much as I want to talk about this here. Now, when it comes to history, it's primarily a personal history, which is that there's a number of these rifles hanging out in the back of the arms room at work, and I decided that since I've really been wanting something shorter than my standard duty rifle, which is an M4A1, for day-to-day duty type purposes, that I would go ahead and give one of these a whirl, and that's how I came into this rifle. Now, how old this rifle is, how it is that it got into the organization and all that kind of stuff, I have no idea. The armorer does not know. Anybody who's around, who's been here longer than I have, does not know. I haven't really been able to track it down. I have some guesstimates based on features as to when it might have shown up, but nothing for sure. Now, I did contact Gray Ghost Precision to see if they could give me any illumination, especially since some of the features of this rifle are very individual and something that I thought perhaps they did more than just provide the lowers for. However, as it would turn out in my correspondence with them, all I've managed to uncover is that they did in fact provide these lowers directly, and that's pretty much it. They don't have anything to say about parts and all that kind of stuff. They say all they did was furnish the lowers to this business. So unfortunately, that was a dead end. They haven't really even been able to give me like a timeline for manufacture or anything along those lines. All right, guys, that pretty much covers history. And that was probably one of the faster history bits that I've ever done. So with that being the case, why don't we go ahead and get into the features of this particular rifle. Starting off, we have a Knight's Armament M4QD flash hider. Now, it kind of looks like it's a standard M16A2 flash hider. However, it does have spiral grooves and this notch cut out into the muzzle. See if you guys can see that right there. And this is actually set up, this was a very common muzzle device on the earlier production Mark 18 Mod 0s. Now, something that's very important to keep in mind, guys, is that the Mark 18 Mod 0 is not necessarily a solid technical data package except in a couple of instances. When it comes to muzzle devices, sometimes handguards, stocks, all that kind of stuff, there's quite a wide variance, and it comes down to the individual user or organization that is utilizing it in order to be able to make those changes. But this muzzle device was a frequent adaptation on early Mark 18s. Now, this was actually meant to be used with Knight's Armaments. Let's see if I remember this all correctly. The QD SSNT4. And if I got that wrong, I'll annotate it appropriately down below, which is a gate lock type suppressor. Now, unfortunately, we don't have any of those types of suppressors lying around, so I didn't get an opportunity to be able to shoot this suppressed. And in addition to that, a lot of newer Mark 18s have gone over to, or at least the standard package for Mark 18s right now includes Surefire muzzle devices in order to be able to work with Surefire suppressors. So this is a little bit out of date for most organizations at this point. Now, coming back to our barrel, we have a 10.3-inch chrome line, hammer forged, SOCOM profile barrel. But what's weird about it is that it's in a 1-9 twist. Now, this is one of the major departures from the Mark 18 technical data package, where the vast majority of Mark 18 barrels are 1-7 twists. That is one of the features of the Mark 18. It was not really made, a true to form Mark 18 was not really produced in any other twist rate but 1-7. By the time the Mark 18 came online, the M16A2 was already in common service, which was the first AR-15 to adopt the 1-7 twist. So it would make sense that the Mark 18 would do the same. So I've been very confused as to where this barrel came from, and I've spent a lot of time trying to find a similar profile and chrome lined 10.3 or 10.5 inch 1-9 twist barrel, and I've been having quite a bit of trouble. The closest I've gotten is nitride. Now, I've started to wonder if perhaps this is a DPMS upper or something along those lines, because early on, DPMS did utilize a lot of 1-9 twist barrels, but I can't really find anything for sure, or at least I'm not knowledgeable enough to find anything for sure on this upper that indicates that it came from DPMS. So I guess we'll just have to wonder for the moment. Now, as true to form with the Mark 18, we do in fact have a bayonet lug. I don't know why I like mind glitched there for a second. A bayonet lug mounted underneath the barrel, even though you really can't fit a bayonet on this rifle. It's not really long enough, but the bayonet lug was included, so that is true to the Mark 18 technical data package. We have an F-marked front sight post. A lot of people have very strong opinions about the front sight post. I don't necessarily mind it. We do have a carbine length gas system, and as far as I can tell from shooting this, this is following the Mark 18 standard of being a little bit wider gas port for an over-gassed system overall, which is something that's important for reliability in military rifles. You will frequently find AKs and ARs, military rifles, being over-gassed. That's in order to be able to make sure that the functioning bits will overpower any crud or mud or anything like that that gets sucked into the action. Now, our handguard is a Knights Armament quad rail, pretty typical on the original mottos. These handguards are not light, however, they are heat shielded, which I do appreciate because this rifle does get quite hot. I can't imagine what it would be like without a heat shield. And though not necessarily the lightest thing, I find them very easy to work around as far as, you know, attaching things and all that kind of stuff. Newer Mark 18s do utilize M-lock rails, the URGI to be specific, but I am just fine with this kind of classic look right here. Now, on top of this rail, I have a PEC-15 Alpha, also known as a D-ball. This is an excellent output for both a visible red laser for daytime operations if you wanted to use that, as well as infrared, flood, and laser type capabilities. I generally just use this on the infrared spectrum whenever I get the opportunity to do so. And I don't really put a lot of use into the flood. And that's one thing that I'll say about this over a regular PEC-15, is that the flood beam is very narrow, which is great because it manages to poke out to much greater distance, but it's kind of a pain in that it doesn't work like a Stubby flashlight or something like a flashlight in an indoor type sense. It works as a fantastic flashlight for reaching out to distance and identifying whatever. However, that is what I have a Surefire M300 for, mounted on this side rail right here. This has both visible and IR spectrum capability, and as you can see here, guys, true to form, if you've seen any of my other AR-15 videos, you know I prefer to run clicky caps because I don't want to accidentally discharge a beam of light, be it visible or on the IR spectrum. Blinding is blinding, and a lot of people don't get very happy with you if you start sitting there blinding them in the middle of an operation. All right, you'll also note that we have a standard sling swivel. This is an older attachment point on M4s, and I'm surprised that it's still here. As you can see, we're not utilizing it because it's a terrible position to run a sling. On the bottom of this rifle, I do have a Magpul vertical grip. I prefer vertical grips whenever I get the opportunity to run them. I still angle my grip as I build it on the vertical grip, but I find it in a more comfortable position for my wrist whenever it is that I'm punching out the rifle and all that kind of stuff. I feel like this is more comfortable for me overall. Travis Haley actually did a bit about how he feels that on shorter setups like this, especially with these short rails, that it's better to have a vertical grip as opposed to an angled foregrip. And having used both, I kind of tend to agree with him on this matter. Who knew? Maybe Travis Haley knows what he's talking about. All right, now we do have the standard slip ring collar, which is not my favorite method of being able to hold on handguards, but it is true to the technical data package. You'll see here we have a 511 2-point sling, which has been, by a previous user, just hooked in through the vent holes on the handguard and then attached to the buttstock with a bit of cord. I've not had any issues with it. I've seen no need to change it at this point, at least. On top of the rifle, we have an EOTech 553, which, if I understand correctly, has been discontinued. This runs off of 2 lithium batteries. It has the the 1 MOA center dot with the 65 MOA outer circle, which I have to say, as far as red dots and fast site acquisition is concerned, I really do like the circle dot reticle. However, one of my big issues with EOTechs is that they have fairly short battery life. Now, this Optic addresses that by having an auto off feature, which does help, but I have to say, in the couple months that I've been running this rifle, I've had the batteries die twice, whereas the Aimpoint and Comp M4 that is sitting on top of my M4A1 has been on this entire time with a battery that I found lying on the ground and has yet to die. So, kind of tells you the difference between the two optics, honestly. Now, this is night vision capable, of course, very important. I have a MATEC flip-up rear sight. Pretty standard. I have just enough space with this optic arrangement and to be able to mount this MATEC rear sight, so that's pretty nice. The MATEC, for those of you who don't know, is adjustable for distance. Should you actually be trying to push your backup iron sights out to, 500 meters or something like that. All right, now going into the upper. Guys, if you've seen any of my AR-15 videos before, you know what it is I'm going to say about the upper and all that kind of stuff, so you can go ahead and check the description and jump ahead to content that you actually want to consume. For those of you who are new to the channel, though, let's go ahead and hop into my opinions on an upper receiver. So, first off, we have a standard AR-15 charging handle. I don't really get broken up about charging handles overall. I like the standard AR-15 charging handle because it has a very small footprint. It's less likely to catch on my gear. I also don't spend a lot of time having to run my charging handles, so I don't feel like I need more surface area in order to be able to grip it, in order to be able to clear malfunctions or anything along those lines. I haven't had it be that big of an issue for me yet. Also, since I'm not running this suppressed, I'm not necessarily worried about gas leaking into my face, so I don't need a suppressor-capable charging handle. All right, now, the forward assist has a tendency to be a hot button topic for an awful lot of people. Some people like to cite that Eugene Stoner didn't want the rifle to have a forward assist, that a forward assist is actually more likely to cause issues than it is to be able to correct because the bullet doesn't want to go in the chamber. There's probably a very good reason, blah, 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 blah. There's all these things about it. I myself use a forward assist quite frequently because I frequently do press checks, and it's not that unusual for the bolt not to go fully in a battery after a press check, especially if you've been shooting a lot, you got some carbon buildup, or perhaps you're in a dry, dusty environment. You might just happen to need to tap the forward assist in order to make sure that when you come up from the ready position that you have a bang and not a click. Because I'll tell you right now, guys, if you're in a situation where you need it, that click is deafening. And I would much rather go ahead and utilize the forward assist. The important thing about the forward assist is that it's not an easy button. It's not a redo. So if you're shooting and you have a malfunction, the forward assist may not be the thing that you want to hit. You might actually want to have to go through and diagnose what the issue is or transition to a sidearm, whatever the situation dictates. But if you're just doing administrative functions and the bolt doesn't go all the way into battery, it's pretty nice to be able to have a forward assist to be able to help it along the way. That's enough about the forward assist. All right, now we also have a brass deflector. Pretty key mil-spec thing. Yeah, it's pretty fantastic if you're doing like transitional shoulder type shooting. I consider this to be very important. Sometimes people omit it because it streamlines the receiver and it also takes off a little bit of weight. Now, of course, we also have a dust cover. Big fan of the dust cover. Any opportunity I get to go ahead and seal the system, I take. Now, our bolt is a mil-spec bolt, properly staked, gas key, and all that kind of stuff. Pretty standard, not a whole lot to talk about with the bolt. And of course, we also have M4 feed ramps. Pretty standard for the technical data package of the rifles that we're talking about. Now, coming to our lower, we have a single side fire selector, which is fine with me. I'm not the biggest fan of ambidextrous fire selectors just because they have a tendency to irritate my grip on the other side. And I had my original training done around single side fire selectors, so it's pretty natural for me to curl my finger back in order to be able to switch between safe and all that kind of stuff. This is a 3-position fire selector. This does have a giggle switch. Now, this is not a transferable machine gun. I'm not a dealer capable of building a post-sample machine gun. This is something provided to me by my employer, which has the capability of being able to go full automatic. And if I happen to get the chance, I will roll in some full auto fire for you guys. All right, we have a standard single side magazine release, standard single side bolt release, and then also a pretty standard mil-spec trigger. It is two-stage and blew right through it there. It has just the ever so slightest take up before it releases. Now, something I find interesting is that this rifle does actually have anti-rotation pins, which I found to be kind of surprising, but appreciated. Those are a welcome little addition in certain situations. I have had trouble with AR-15 pins before and upgraded them with anti-rotation pins like these. Now, you'll also note that we have an A2 pistol grip. Normally, I absolutely hate the A2 pistol grip. This shelf right here has a tendency to irritate my finger, but I've really not noticed it be an issue here in the past couple months, so I've not dremeled it off. Standard mag well, pretty standard overall for the rest of the lower receiver. Now, of course, we come back to our receiver extension. It is properly staked. It is a mil-spec receiver extension, and we come back to a Magpul CTR stock, which I absolutely love. I'm a big fan of slim, minimalist stocks because they don't wind up taking up a whole bunch of space against armor or anything along those lines, and they are still comfortable for me to be able to get a cheek weld on. So like the soft mod stocks, I've never particularly cared for, but either mil-spec or now these Magpul CTRs, I'm a big fan of. All right, guys, I think that pretty much covers features. How does it shoot? This thing is an absolute blast to shoot. Now, a couple things about its shooting dynamics to take into account. First off, very first thing I ever noticed is that this thing has a very bright muzzle flash, especially if you're shooting in dark or twilight type conditions. You really start to notice it then. And it can make it very difficult to be able to obscure more distant shots. Now, when it comes to distance, I have run this rifle out as far as successful engagements at 250. However, I was having a lot of trouble on that particular evening trying to hit the 300 meter target. And a lot of it came down to not being able to spot impacts. The area around that target was dark and there wasn't a lot of contrast in order to be able to make adjustments reliably. Now, for close range shooting and all that kind of stuff, this thing is absolutely fantastic. I do have to drive a little bit into the rifle. It is a little punchy on recoil impulse with its oversized gas port and carbine lathe gas system. However, it's still possible, and I've been getting some pretty decent splits and excellent groups out of this rifle at close range. Now, for more distance type shooting, this has not had the best accuracy. Not surprising for a 10.3 close quarters battle rifle. So about the best I've seen out of this is about a 4-inch group. A lot of times it's been worse than that, and I've shot a wide variety of ammunition through this as well. I have shot 45 grain Winchester frangible ammunition. I have shot 55 grain Bulgarian soft lead core ammunition, steel core 55 grain Bulgarian ammunition, as well as, let's see, M855, M855A1, PPU M193 equivalent, and Mark 262, not to say not to also forget the occasional M856 tracer round. So this rifle has been mostly reliable. Now, when I first got a hold of this rifle, I did have a couple of issues. So parts kind of had to be salvaged in order to be able to get this rifle up and running. And the first bolt that I was handed, I went through, did a quick functions check, which also happened to include, in this case, checking to see how my gas rings were. And if you guys have never done a gas rings check, this will be a fun little informational thing for you. If you're ever concerned about your gas rings, take your bolt, hold it up over a hard surface, and then set the bolt head against that surface and just kind of let go of the bolt. Ideally, this should be able to stand up on its own. The bolt should not recede into the bolt carrier. If it does, it means your gas rings are fried. Well, in this case, as soon as I let it go, it dropped right down, and I would soon find out that that was because the bolt didn't have gas rings at all. So I swapped it out for a different bolt, took it to the range to 0, and found out that the gas key was super loose and I was not getting any cycling. So I swapped this out for a different bolt, and it's been running fine ever since. So, pretty excellent range report with this particular rifle. Now, I would definitely never shoot this without ear pro, by the way. It is loud. I don't necessarily think that the videos do it justice. This rifle is very loud. All right, guys. What are my recommendations for a rifle like this? I would not call this a do-all rifle. I would definitely call this a purpose-built CQB type rifle. This is something that if you're planning on doing a lot of close quarters or in-vehicle type stuff, this is the type of rifle that you should be utilizing. That is my opinion overall. That's real quick and easy to sum up in a nutshell. Now, what are my uses for this particular rifle? Well, in my day job, I have a technical skill that does not necessarily require me to always be a shooter. So with that being the case, I like having something light and small that I can tuck out of my way very easily and be able to perform my primary functions without a rifle getting into the way. The M4A1 is just a little too long for that particular purpose. This rifle is just right. This is what I've been wanting, and I really wish I could keep it. However, my time with this rifle will be very limited. Now, some other things that I really like about this rifle in comparison to an M4A1 is that it's incredibly light, which is not to say that an M4A1 is super heavy, as much as it's to say that it's not necessarily built with being light in mind, not in comparison to this particular rifle with a couple inches shorter barrel. Now, a couple other things to keep in mind here, guys, on this particular setup, and this is just kind of a little pro tip. This light is set up on the light mount that came from Surefire with it, which is this thumb wheel type setup. I have had this thing come loose so many times, which is why I now have it tied down so that even if it does come loose, it's not gonna fall off of the rifle. I actually just had to tighten it up the other day because it had come significantly loose, and I was doing some barrier work that day and really pressing against the light. So, a little pro tip for you if you guys didn't know. All right, guys. I think that pretty much covers my thoughts on the MK18. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I apologize for the surroundings. Hopefully before too much longer, I'll be back on the normal reviewing couch, and we will all rejoice for that fact. All right, guys, that's pretty much what I got. Have a good day.